Okay, good evening everybody, those that are online, and members are online, and members of the public online. And I'm not sure there's anyone in the gallery this evening. Have we got any apologies for absence? Thank you very much. Disclosures of interest and dispensation. To receive any disclosures by members of disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests, non-registrable interests in matters on the agenda, and the nature of any interest and details of any dispensations obtained. Members are reminded of the need to repeat their declaration immediately prior to the commencement of the item in question. So this evening's discussion point is that the report of the Chief Executive, the purpose of the report, which is identified in the report as agenda item 3, and we can debate and discuss and put forward questions that we can respond to until we get to a point where we will make a decision this evening as to the way forward. Lorna, would you like to invite you to?
Thank you, Chair. I won't go through the detail of this report as we have just had a thorough debate, but I would just like to make a few points, if I may. I think what we have before us in the One Sussex business case, the One East Sussex business case, is a robust piece of work. I think it absolutely meets the criteria set out in paragraph 7 of the covering report in terms of what the government is expecting from this process. It's been a collaborative effort over the last 6 months. An awful lot of work has gone into it to get there. And I feel what we've come out with at the end product is one that we can be assured is a good reflection of the views of our residents as well. The engagement and consultation that was undertaken to support the business case or about the business case for East Sussex absolutely says that the majority of our residents and stakeholders believe that keeping the unitary authority on the boundaries of East Sussex makes the most sense, and the business case reflects that. I will be very happy to answer any questions that come up. I think the most important part of the business case is the options appraisal, which tests the options, the 3 options that were put forward in the business case. The first one, as I say, is a single unitary authority for East Sussex, with Brighton and Hove remaining on its boundaries. The second one is 2 unitary option, which divides East Sussex into 2 councils but doesn't specify geography. And the third one was a proposal that came through in July from Brighton and Hove around the extension of Lewes. It should be noted that the proposal from Brighton and Hove last week, that came out of Wednesday last week, hasn't been possible to undertake an analysis of that business case in comparison to the One East Sussex proposal. So I think that's probably all I need to say. I think we've had a really good debate, and I look forward to answering any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lorna. I'm sure there are going to be questions and discussion points. Councillor Bayliss.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Leader, and thank you to our Chief Executive. And I'd like to echo all the previous comments around the work that's gone into this. I know that people have been very dedicated in their efforts in pulling together, the proposals before us. I have got an amendment to the resolution as printed. I'm not sure if it's an amendment because it's not been actually proposed or seconded. So this could be the proposal, which has been circulated to all members of the Cabinet. So it's resolved that both the business case for local government reorganisation in East Sussex, which is attached, and the Brighton and Hove proposal be approved for submission to the Minister of State for local government and English devolution. Number 2, the findings of the resident and stakeholder engagement, which inform the production of both reports, be noted, and the Chief Executive be granted delegated authority in consultation with the Leader and Deputy Leaders to make any final amendments to the submissions and provide any additional correspondence with the submission. I do this, it's no surprise, I think, to everybody that I've been consistently opposed to the One Sussex model. I don't think East Sussex, as it currently stands, serves residents of this end of the county as well as it could do. I accept what Councillor Burton says about some of the sort of support functions, but certainly if you look at highways functions and some of those other, I do a voluntary work in schools, and our SEN provision leaves a lot to be desired. For me, the big problem with the One Sussex model is the size of it. It just does not work. I mean, I could almost have a full-time job just doing the work, the casework and the work that is generated in Central Ward. I mean, most people write to me about highways issues anyway, which I then pass on to my county councillor colleague. But it is hard work, you know, finding the time to do all the casework. Now, if you were going to double that and double the areas of responsibility, I almost think that is completely unmanageable as the way it's set out in the proposal for the One Sussex. I just think it is too big. Brighton and Hove, I'm sure other councillors will talk about Brighton and Hove, is a much smaller unitary authority, delivering the whole range of services. There's a lot of talk about the criteria, about 500,000 residents, but don't forget it does say that if there is a geographical reasons for having a smaller numbers of residents, then that you can do that. So if you've got a large area, which East Sussex is, and you feel that is too much, you can actually reduce the number of residents to the unitary authority. If you created 2 unitary authorities, there's nothing to stop us working with those other unitary authorities to commission social care or other services. Nothing at all. In fact, actually, I would argue that social care or adult social care might be one of those things that over time, over 2 or 3 years, we could actually devolve up to mayoral authority, because you could get real cost savings by commissioning it at that sort of level. Not forgetting that you know, the sort of planning and housing will be at that sort of level. So for me, it's absolutely you know, it would be the wrong choice. I understand all the arguments about let's do it quickly, it's going to save money, it's not going to cost, you know. But at the end of the day, we must sort of like put those to one side and do what we think is best for our residents. And I have to say, I could never vote for this solution. I just do not think it will serve our residents well. Thank you. And I hope I've got a seconder.
He's in the time tunnel. You're back with us.
Yes, thank you, Chair, for that. Like Christine, I want to speak in favour of the Brighton and Hove proposal going with the East Sussex. For me, it's the very essence of democracy is choice, and I think with the choice presented to the people, I feel very strongly that they will vote for councils which are more local and are connected in the communities. So their proposal, the 5 councils, are councils that are big enough to be resilient and small enough to stay connected. Each council will be between 300,000 and 400,000 people, large enough to be financially viable, but small enough to stay rooted in communities. What we have is a connected coastal community with, I would say, a rural hinterland, and that's going to be important, vitally important as we go forward. If we want to have sufficient space and capacity to build the 1.5 million homes that nationally will be needed to house people. So I think it's a real chance also to tackle deprivation, and the councillor beside my colleague mentioned quite critically the high levels of deprivation that exist within pockets of East Sussex. So, and I think that has failed and has not been adequately addressed under the two-tier system that exists in East Sussex County Council. So for me, the case for reform is not just about structure for its own sake. It's about councils that are simpler to navigate, safer for services, and closer to communities. And I think it's important to note that even within the One East Sussex document, it does mention that residents have consistently stressed the importance of councils they recognise, so that the parish and the neighbourhood voice is not lost. The three unitaries, West, East and Bright, if they stay the same, well, they offer some short-term simplicity, but they create uneven scales. Some areas will be feeling remote from decision-making, and it risks concentrating too much power in one or two very large authorities. Of course, as a background to this, and to be fair to the East Sussex document, it's a very well put together document. It does mention the national pressures in adult social care and SEND and homelessness, and these will continue in the background. So, our coherent coastal footprint with the rural hinterland improves the ability to manage these pressures on a local scale. Of course, there are challenges. We have an older than average age profile, health inequalities, especially in Hastings, constrained housing supply and the A259 bottlenecks. I argue that these are problems which we can address on a local area. Financial risks cannot be forgotten, though. The Brighton and Hove document mentions that this will be funded safely through reserves, capital receipts, and subject to government decision, time-limited capacity support. There are other mitigations for the financial risks, guardrails on reserves so that there's no drawdown above the risk assessed minima, shared corporate platforms across 5 unitaries, generating savings, sequencing of transformation of services so that councils which are at higher risk can adopt the change later, and independent assurance of each council's medium-term financial strategy. It is estimated that the transition costs are high within the 5 unitaries, at the lowest level 168 millions. But the model does not assume relief from the fair funding review, so it is a prudent one. And I should mention also that the One East Sussex does mention as well that despite all this, and I do agree which has been said by, I think it's Councillor Prochak and Stanger earlier, that unless there is a financial settlement, it's almost like the elephant in the room. We've suffered a lot under austerity in the last 10 or so years, and unless there's a real financial settlement, you can draw lines on a map anywhere and it'll make little difference. The East Sussex document mentioned that the structural debt of 226 million will exist by 2032-33 if these are not addressed. But my main argument is about democracy. It's about accountability and councils that people recognise and are closer to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Rory. Catherine?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, as people have observed already, this is going to happen. The question we have to address is how. I have a lot of experience in local government as a member of 2 councils, one for 16 years and one for 33. And I would say that no council anywhere is without its faults. They all have problems. And I can remember when I joined the county council, Hastings and Eastbourne had their own, I've forgotten what they called them, but they're sort of sub-branches of highways. They did their own highways work and it didn't work. And they wanted to come back in to the main county council fold and not be autonomous. And education issues have been muddied hugely by the advent of academies and government legislation. Before that, it was very much easier and we had fewer problems. Is what I would say in defence of the one county council. And I was very struck, actually, by something Councillor Burton said about the county council operates as one county already, which indeed it does. And I think those of us who work in it are just so close that we forget that. We're just so focused on delivering services, we forget where we deliver them to. And it's everywhere, the very far east and the very far west. And I don't think there's anybody on the county council who hasn't said on behalf of their residents, well, of course, the county council neglects my bit. Everybody else is fine. My bit gets overlooked. It doesn't. We are used to working like that. But, of course, we're not talking about an enhanced county council. We're not talking about a county council takeover. We're talking about a whole new other council with new councillors, because there's going to be, if we go down the One East Sussex route, 100 councillors until we've had a review. So at least 50 of those will be new to operating in a One East Sussex environment, and many of the existing county councillors will either not get re-elected or elected to the new council, or will be standing down. So there will be a lot of new councillors with no baggage to help to create a successful new authority. And the Brighton and Hove option is the option that Brighton and Hove have chosen to put forward. It is exactly their ability and their right and their duty to do so. But it will be consulted on, come what may, because they will submit this to the government as what they want to see. And I am very uncomfortable at the thought of having to vote in favour of it tonight, because I've not seen the documentation in the depth that I've seen the One East Sussex documentation, because it only came to us last week. And neither have actually other members of this council. So as a cabinet, we've not had the guidance from the council about this Brighton and Hove option that we have had about the One East Sussex. So much as I respect my council colleagues on the cabinet, I'm afraid I can only vote for One East Sussex.
All right, thank you, Catherine. Is there any other hands? Gareth. Oh, sorry, I beg your Sue first, and then Gareth. I beg your pardon.
Thank you. The number of times over this whole process I've heard the expression, we are where we are. And that's what's happened. And also our leader has said, this is being done to us. So my view is it's being done to us, and in fact the government will decide in the end. There are a couple of councils where the governments didn't actually approve of any of the suggestions from each of the former councils. So the government will decide. They know that bigger is better for them. And so the One East Sussex, and the one we've worked on and the one we know the best, we've got to work with it and mitigate any of the problems that have been raised. And thank you to Overview and Scrutiny and Councillor Osborne for actually doing that in a very, very thorough way. And that goes back to the letter that we're going to be writing. I don't know what else we can do in terms of highlighting these problems that were listed so well, but we need to find ways of doing it. And I was really interested in the actual residence survey, because there were 4 things that came out of the residence survey that we have the power, if we get to be a pilot, to actually mitigate some of the problems of localism. Because the first one was the loss of the 4 things that came out of it: loss of local representation and identity. So if we don't get that right, we won't succeed. Impact on services was another one. Desire for consultation. And I learned this new thing. What is it called? The gunning. Is it called the gunning principles of consultation? Very interesting. Consultation, they mean engagement, which it doesn't mean sending out a questionnaire. It means actually sitting down, talking to people, finding out what they feel, what they think. And I think that would be something we could follow as well. The third thing was protection of natural areas, and we've talked about climate change and nature recovery, which is so important. I was glad to see that on the mayoral responsibility, nature recovery. So that will be a good thing. And then addressing deprivation, which has already been mentioned. So if we could tackle those, look at those 4 things separately, highlight them to the government that this is what we'd like to address and we think has been missed out. And I don't know what else we can do in terms of talking to our MPs, and actually getting them to understand that parish and town councils are important, and voluntary groups are important, and community groups are important. And if we don't include them, well, we won't be successful. So going back to the actual motion I can't support the Brighton and Hove because we haven't worked on it, we haven't done... I mean, I can't remember reading, because it says in the motion that we also include the stakeholder engagement findings. I can't remember seeing those. So I find it very difficult. Well, I'm sorry, I can't support it. I have to support the One East Sussex.
Thank you, Sue. Are there any other members of Cabinet Gareth?
Yes, just on this, I mean, I think it's, I wanted to say, I do truly believe that residents deserve nothing less than a choice between the One Sussex model, which, you know, I accept is a great piece of work, and financially, structurally, it does make sense. But the five council model that Brighton and Hove have proposed is a compelling piece of work. Yes, I mean, I think it's important to say it would create balanced authorities, each with 300 to 400,000 people, in avoiding the extreme of scale that a single unitary in East and West Sussex would give. So that it would create unitaries that are not too big, but not too small to lack capacity. It would strengthen the smaller five unitary structure would strengthen our identity as a coastal community. The boundaries, yes, there are some proposed changes, but those changes make sense and are actually around where people live and how they work, and how they and make services for those people easier to access and better coordinated. The five unitary structure would be financially resilient and capable of delivering complex services. I think also I think we have to accept that particularly in West Sussex, there is perhaps more of a spread of opinion about how local government reorganisation should be taken forward. We seem to be fairly set on this side of the county in going for a one unitary model, and we've been heading towards that for quite a long time now. However, there is a lot of different opinion in West Sussex, and the Minister will have to consider that, and will have to, yeah, and absolutely right, the Minister will have to consider the Brighton and Hove submission in its own right. Yeah, you know, I don't want to see this council, in a way, not offering people the choice between the models that are being proposed around the whole county. And we are, you know, particularly where we're looking at being a mayoral strategic authority, you know, we are going to be looking at, the Minister is going to be looking at how the region is structured in its entirety. We may have a preference for what we believe here, but it's going to have to fit with what the whole of the Sussex is. And there is a lot of opinion about how that should be. So I would certainly support the inclusion of the Brighton and Hove submission with ours to allow residents, so residents can see that we are allowing them to make that choice between those two.
Okay, thank you for that, Gareth. Ash?
Thank you. Yeah, I just feel that where we're talking about giving people choice, I think you would need to give people choice with an equal level of information. And I just don't think that the Brighton and Hove pack that came out a week ago fits that brief. I think from a Rother perspective, I personally wouldn't feel comfortable endorsing their proposal because of how late it has arrived and the very little detail when you compare it to the formidable work and clarity that has gone into the One East Sussex document. So we know that Brighton and Hove are going to submit this anyway, so it will get in front of the Minister. I just don't understand why, as an authority, we would want to endorse something that we have had no input into and very little context or ability to ask questions or anything like that. Of course, yes, there will be a consultation going forward, so the public will have the opportunity to do that. But personally, I feel it's just too little too late from Brighton, and I wouldn't want to put my name to something that I haven't been involved in in the level of involvement I've had, certainly from the financial aspect, with the One East Sussex proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ash. Aaron.
Thank you, Doug. So just to stay where I am on this now, I want to support the One East Sussex, and I don't think I can equally back the 5 unitary one. And that's changed a little bit. Not that I was essentially backing the 5 unitary, but I did think about whether it should be given equal footing towards the minister. And the reason for getting there, just to take objectively through it, if you go back to the letter from 7th of May, the interim report, it did actually outline in there that it would accept unitaries of a lower size and some of the measures that are in the Brighton and Hove document. But it does state there in one of the final paragraphs that it should be effective collaboration between all councils. And I don't believe it has really done that in terms of reaching out to other authorities. Secondly, this morning, I took the day of work to watch the Wealdon Full Council and the Wealdon Cabinet. And Wealdon have actually backed neither the One East Sussex, and neither they backed the Brighton and Hove 5 unitary model, which I was given the impression that they may well do that, but they didn't. But they did state in their covering letter that they may support smaller unitaries, and that ministers should perhaps look at that Brighton and Hove model. They stated they weren't going to support it. I also watched Hastings over the scrutiny the other night as well, and I've also been taking abreast of what's happening in West Sussex, has been mentioned. West Sussex County Council have supported the One West Sussex, but the districts and boroughs there are actually supportive of splitting up the West Sussex into 2 unitaries. But they have a greater size, 800,000 or so, I think. So for them, it works more. I do have some issues as well that have not been covered just today in the news. In terms of the mayor, the funding for the mayor will be around, I think, 1.7 million or something or so, or maybe more. But each unitary will then have an equal compensation and cost towards that. So if the mayoral funding becomes deficient, that will then have to be come from the various unitaries. So if there's any shortfall per population, the larger unitaries will have to pay more. But equally, they will also have a greater vote in some of these things. I have concerns around that. The splitting of the West Sussex may eliminate some of that, but I do have concerns around that. And as has been mentioned by Councillor Project, no model is going to be a panacea to the funding. We know that. So, yeah, I'm going to be backing the One East Sussex, but I do think in the current letter, mention should be given to the Brighton and Hove model. We already know that, we suspect that whatever comes back from government will not be as the document is. Changes may be suggested, consultation, feedback, and there may be things within the Brighton and Hove one that they like or might suggest to ours, to other councils and residents. So, yeah, let's just leave it there and just, those are my comments.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. Councillor Sam Coleman.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak. And it's been a really interesting discussion, actually, Cabinet. Thank you for that. It's been. I agree with the concern that there hasn't been enough time to read the Brighton and Hove proposal fully, or to be invested in it in the same way that we are obviously invested as a council in this One East Sussex model, because we've been part of it, our officers have been part of forging that. But I asked Cabinet to reflect back to the council meeting when we launched into this One East Sussex business case and creating it. And the motion I put forward for us to delay that in order to consider other models being included in that work. And if we had done so, then our staff and officers could have also looked at these alternative models, the 2 unitaries for East Sussex, And we would have had much more of a comparison at this stage to be able to look at both models with equal investment and work out which was better for our residents. We haven't been able to do that. However, I do think that at this stage, it's about a business case. It's not about a final proposal that's going to be signed, sealed and delivered tomorrow. It's about a business case. And I think both the Brighton and Hove case and the One East Sussex case have been made as business cases. And I think if Cabinet are minded to reflect the views of the full range of views of this council, then yes, those need to be included in the covering letter for sure. But I think also the clear preference of two models within this council should be reflected in your motion as well. And I encourage Cabinet members to consider supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Councillor Richard, I beg your pardon, Hazel? You didn't put your hand up. I didn't see your hand. You had a finger up. I want a hand. I want a arm. Yeah. Hazel.
Thank you. Yeah. I've struggled with the whole Brighton and Hove, One East Sussex, but my main concern is this is being done not only to us, but to our district residents. And I'm not sure that the impact of it will be seen until it's actually happened. And we're talking about what ifs all the way through this. And the only way forward is to actually get something to government in whatever form that we think is appropriate and get the feedback, because this is just the beginning, is it not, Lorna? And I feel it's going to take an awful long time. And meanwhile, we have to carry on business as usual. I believe with the Brighton and Hove proposal, I hear what everybody's saying about that. I do think it was too late and we haven't had time to look at it. I think perhaps Brighton have done this to protect themselves rather than thinking about the rest of us. I'm reluctant to support One East Sussex 100%, but if I have to be true to myself, then I will support it this evening. But I do think that somewhere in the letter you have to refer to Brighton and Hove and its impact, either to us or to the rest of the region. But I go back to what Councillor Osborne says. It's really about how does it affect me and what I get for my council tax. And to be honest, I don't think I could answer that question if a resident asked me today, because I think this whole thing is going to be so big that none of us really know. That's my opinion. So I'll be voting for One East Sussex. Thank you.
Thank you, Hazel. Christine, you'd like to make another comment?
Yes, I just want to say that the motion that we've proposed is a compromise. It's compromise in that we are not saying support wholeheartedly the Brighton and Hove. We're just saying that there are sort of concerns around, and I picked up those concerns that people have raised about the One Sussex model. So that would be the first thing I would say. It doesn't say that the Brighton and Hove is better than the One Sussex. It's just saying that we want to put them both up there and let the minister decide, if you like, and then the public to decide in a consultation. And we can argue our cases with the public during that consultation period. I didn't mention in the initial debate about the population size. So if you look at One Sussex, this is the bit that really worries me. It predicts, I mean, it is currently at 500,000 now, but it predicts by 2038 that it will be over 600,000. That's an awful lot of people to represent in one council. And, you know, as I say, that is my big concern, that it's too big. becomes too remote, and people want councils that they can relate to. So that will be my final comment.
Thank you, Christine. Councillor John Barnes. John?
Thank you, Leader. Since Councillor Coleman has spoken, I thought I ought just to say 2 or 3 things. First of all, the Brighton Hove proposal will be in front of the Minister and will be consulted on, because clearly it's going forward to the Minister. I think it'd be very odd if he didn't consult on it. But what I would worry about is if we are seen to be lending it credence at this point when we haven't consulted our own residents, and our own residents have made it very clear that they favour 1 East Sussex. My second point, which I think Cabinet members should bear in mind, is the sheer amount of disruption involved in actually having the particular 2 East Sussex model that Brighton Hove envisages. It breaks the county boundary in the north, breaks the district boundary in Wealden and Lewes. We know that most of those areas in Lewes that want to stay with East Sussex are bitterly opposed to going with Brighton Hove. You can see that in our own third option, which was consulted upon. So I think we're in danger of indulging a late proposal that hasn't been as well thought through, to be honest, and will maximise disruption of services for our own residents. I really do think that if Brighton Hove wanted their proposal to be taken seriously by us, it should have come forward in time to allow us to analyse it and consult upon it with our own residents. There was a clear majority in council tonight. There would probably be more, I think, if some of us who couldn't make it for one reason or another had been in the chamber. And I really do think the 1 East Sussex is the one that we should put forward, and leave it to Brighton Hove to put theirs in front of the Minister, and for the Minister to consult on both. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Councillor Richard Thomas. Richard.
Thank you, Doug. A very, very interesting and very, very good debate, I think, on all sides. I do want to say something about the Brighton and Hove proposal, because it's very clear that it doesn't actually meet the government criteria. You can try and stretch them a little bit, and you can say there's flex and so on. But if you take a rubber band, you flex it too much and it breaks. And I think it breaks the rules, quite simply, that the government has set in relation to this kind of thing. And I think that's really important. And it's all very well, to talk about, it's going to mean a little bit of extra disruption. It's not going to mean a little bit of extra disruption. If it's going to cost £60 million more in terms of additional administration costs, think what that actually means in terms of human beings. It means that services will be disrupted, services will not be operating as smoothly as they otherwise would be, and the strain upon authorities like our own will be dramatic. We all know around this room that Rother District Council doesn't have the money, the human resources, the bandwidth or the time to be able to move to a new system of government and maintain services and implement a new housing strategy. Imagine if we had on top of that to put £60 million worth of administrative costs and very little chance of getting that back. The reality is that the government is not giving money to the southern authorities. And so £60 million extra expenditure means £60 million off services. And that means poorer services to our people. I also want to say we can know what might happen if we are part of an authority with Eastbourne and Hastings, because there already is an example. There is Medway. Medway is a coastal unitary. It has a population of about 292,000. Does it have the necessary financial resilience? No. If you look at Medway, it has a budget deficit this year of £11.2 million. it has had to ask the government for £26.4 million in emergency funding and has increased its personal indebtedness to £592 million. To take authorities like Hastings that is struggling financially, another authority that is struggling financially like Eastbourne, yoking them together and putting Bexley in the middle of that, it would be financial folly, and we mustn't go down that road. And I think it's really important that we can't logically support two diametrically opposed options without diminishing the impact of our choice for both. And so we should make a clear choice tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Anybody else? Red light off, please.
Sorry.
Thank you. Yes, interesting. Having worked on this, I'll invite Lorna in a few moments, if I may. Oh, wait, okay, right, okay. Having been involved in this for most of the year, I'm appalled that Brighton had the temerity to come in at this very late stage. We have asked them on so many occasions, come to the table, tell us what you're up to. And I don't think they actually knew what they were up to. I think there was some incompetence there to a certain extent. For them to issue a business case and a proposal 5 days before district and boroughs are meeting in order to discuss this, I think it's embarrassing on them. They went through this smash and grab to try and increase their population base and their land base because they know that they can't fulfil some of the housing requirements. So without any contact with Lewis, they decided that they were going to have part of Lewis, and they came up with various chunks that would actually suit their business case. At the very beginning of this procedure, the minister indicated that existing unitaries could be retained in their size and work forward with that. But Brighton have got restrictions. They've got the Channel and they've got the South Downs, and they knew that they couldn't deliver on housing. There's no evidence base. How they can make proposals for communities and places that they don't know. You know, there they are sitting in Brighton, and they haven't asked anybody. They haven't consulted. They haven't said, what do you think of this? And we've asked them time and time and time again at every level, and they haven't. And the smash and grab into Lewis was a despicable arrangement of trying to work cooperatively. And we're in this sort of situation now that what concerns me about the 5 unitaries is that there's a lack of balance. And we could see councils divided into low income, high need, and high income, low need, which we're seeing within East Sussex at the moment. I can't support being involved with Brighton and Hove City Council. I think it's for those that feel that they want to support that proposition in some way, that they, I'm sure, but it will go up, the minister will look at it, and if they want to support that by way of letter, then I think that's the way forward. But I'm afraid, having worked on this for many, many weeks, and received the comments from other districts and boroughs, I couldn't support this. I think it's arrogant. I really do. Lorna, could I invite you to...
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to be clear about the next steps in the process. Brighton and Hove will submit their proposal. So that will go forward. The government will then make sure it meets their criteria. So it will only go forward to consultation if the government thinks it has met its criteria. So I just want to be clear on that. It won't automatically go to consultation. That assessment will need to be done first. And we have seen that, I think, with Surrey, where Crawley and Reigate and Banstead put forward a proposal and the government decided not to take that forward to the statutory stage of consultation. So if it does meet the criteria, it will go forward. If it doesn't, then it won't. I just wanted to be clear. We're expecting that consultation process to happen between November and January. So I didn't mention that bit, and I thought it was important that we understood. And Chair, I don't think that motion's been, the amendment's been seconded. I just thought I'd mention that. It's difficult to manage. Oh, did he? Thank you. We missed that up here.
Okay, so we've had that...
Can I ask a question? Just to ask a question of Lorna, I think, is that I wonder if this whole thing will unravel? Because it's just been announced, hasn't it, that the government didn't do their own cost review, their own audit before they brought the Act in. Is this going to unravel the whole thing?
Until the government says otherwise, I think, you know, they wrote, the new Secretary of State wrote to us a couple of weeks ago and reconfirmed everything that had been said before. Unless there's any change that comes forward, we have to stick to what's been said so far, and the indication is that they intend to proceed with this process, as far as I am aware.
Yes, the letter was quite clear. It was a case of proceed in line with the compliant arrangements, and this is how we've dealt with it within East Sussex. We are compliant. I think that's important. This proposal from Brighton Hove is not compliant, but I'm not saying it hasn't got some opportunities to have visited it. If it had been on the table earlier, it could well have been part of what we were putting forward. So I think we're at a situation. Move to a vote on the amendment. So those that are in favour of the amendment, thank you. And those who are against the amendment, and that is by, yeah, whatever the numbers are, but that is, the amendment is lost. Okay. Yeah. So I think we're at a point where I think are we going to confirm that we are now in support of the single?
Yeah.
So, sorry, Chair, just to confirm, so that was 3 in favour of the amendment, 6 against the amendment and 1 abstention, Chair.
So we're at the position now, exactly what?
So that amendment was lost, so we're back to the proposal, the recommendations in
the beginning of the report.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to be resolved that the business case for local government reorganisation East Sussex be approved for submission to the Minister of State for Local Government and English Devolution. Findings of the resident stakeholder engagement, which has informed the production of the report, be noted, and the Chief Executive be granted delegated authority in consultation with the leader. I have no issue there if we say with deputy leaders. I think that's appropriate. To make any financial arrangements and submission and provide any additional correspondence with the submission. Yeah. So are we going to vote on that?
I'll second it.
Second. And those in favour?
I did.
And can I have my vote noted, please, in the minutes?
Okay. So have we concluded our...
Yeah, so just to confirm
just
for
to
the record,
confirm the result that this...
7 were for those recommendations as per the slight amendment, and 3 were against.
Thank you. Okay. End of meeting. Very good. Thank you everyone for attending, and thank you for those members who remain behind.